And now I'm just gonna sort of talk about my thoughts on the show as a whole, and now that I have completed it. Um, so yeah, the whole like when J Jamie and Cersei, and then Ned finds out that they're Robert's three kids are not Robert's three kids, that they're actually all Jamie's kids. And so Ned decides that he's going to instead, when Robert dies, he knows that none of those three kids are the rightful heir to the throne. So he decides that he's going to throw his lot in with one of Robert's brothers. I think Robert has two brothers, Renly, who is this little scruffy baby face, and Stannis. I wish it had been Renly because I didn't like Stannis. Stannis was, he felt like he had the right to the throne and all that. And then he gets involved with this god awful Red Witch who is all about, oh, the Lord of Light showed me that you were going to be the king, and blah, blah, blah. And she's like always like whispering in his ear, and he has his right hand is an ex-smuggler named Davos. We love Davos. Davos, thank God, is one of the ones that I was also like, I need him to live. I need him to still be alive at the end of this show. So Stannis is like being whispered in the ear by this stupid red witch woman who I hate. And even like towards the end where like she does one or two good things, I still hated her, and I was glad when she died, even though I was sad when she died. There will be a lot of that. There will be a lot of like, I hated this person. Why am I crying? They're dead. I don't understand. And that's just the sign of how amazing these characters are written. Um, and just, okay, so the Red Witch, she decides that she is going to help Stannis become king. That means that his brother Renly has to die. Scruffy baby King Renly has to die. So she gives birth to a baby cloud through to the cloud monster from Lost, and sends this cloud monster to kill Renly. At this time, Renly is visited by Cat, um, who after poor Ned, after Ned discovers that Joffrey is not the rightful king, um, tries to tell people this, and Joffrey, Cersei gets her son on the throne before he can, and Joffrey accuses Ned of treason and has him killed. I knew this was coming. It was Sean Bean. I knew he was going to die. The only thing that I've seen Sean Bean not die in is the Sharp series that he does, which, fantastic series if you haven't seen it. They're set during the French English War, and he's like the main he's the main character in Sharp. So that's the only thing I don't think I've ever seen him die in. So they kill him, and Robb, his son, played by the insanely beautiful Richard Madden, decides that he's going to go to war against the Lannisters because they still have Sansa there. Cersei, the Lannisters still have Sansa and still have Arya. So Arya's mother Cat goes to Renly to try and get him to help, and she is there when the cloud baby from Lost kills Renly. Now, Also there is this amazing soldier, fighter, kick-ass woman named Brienne. Again, misogyny where? This woman, Gwendoline Christie, girl, I bow. Who hated Brienne? Who? How could you not love her? She's there, and she's badass, and she is a little bit in love with Renly, even though Renly, rest in peace, was very, very gay, and was stooping his wife Marjorie's brother. Marjorie, we also loved her, played by the amazing Natalie Dormer, who I remembered from The Tudors. She played Anne Boleyn in The Tudors, and she was amazing. And so we loved Marjorie. And so Robb goes to war against the Lannisters, and that sort of kind of happens. I'm trying to remember like the sequence of events of things that happen. In his quest to win this war against the Lannisters, he needs the Frey army. Robb does. And so Cat goes to Walder Frey and makes a deal that Robb is going to marry one of his daughters, and Frey will let him use this bridge and their army to cross and fight the Lannisters. But Robb falls in love, and things happen. So he goes back on his word and says that he's not going to marry this Frey's daughter. Instead, he's going to marry for love. Which, how you can't fault him for that. But somebody makes a comment, and they say that that he lost the war the day that he married for love, the day that he married that woman. So he goes to the Freys and is like, well, I won't, because I'm married for love, I'm sorry that I went back on my word. Here, let me make it up to you by giving you my uncle. And he gives him Blackjack Randall. Or maybe Frank Randall will be more accurate, because Blackjack Randall would have slaughtered the fuck out of all those Freys. So Tobias Menzies, our Blackjack Randall from Outlander, is in Game of Thrones, and he plays Cat's brother, cousin, brother, uncle. He's related to Cat, and so Robb gets him to agree to marry one of the Frey girls in exchange for Robb going back on his word, and hopefully that will help. That will mend fences with the Freys. Well, that don't happen. There's a wedding, and things happen at this wedding, and we lose a third of our Starks. I can laugh a little about it now, but I'm still traumatized, because Frey murders Robb, Cat, Robb's wife, and their unborn child. Just as Arya after having escaped when her father died, they managed to sneak her out of King's Landing, which is where the Lannisters are. And so she's been on the road trying to get to Robb, and the Hound has been helping her, helping her because he's kind of kidnapped her and is going to sell her to her family. So she arrives at the Freys right as her family is being slaughtered. And that is known as the Red Wedding. I'm still one of the most, like, if you ask anybody, if you say the words Red Wedding to anybody, and you can tell that they were a Game of Thrones fan by the look of pain and sadness on their face when you say those words. So, Robb is dead. Sansa's still stuck in King's Landing. Being forced to marry Joffrey now. And I'm trying to remember what happens where it's after Stannis decides that he's going to go to war with against the Lannisters because of, like, again, rightful claim. Now that Robert's dead, he thinks he has the rightful claim because Joffrey and all of his and Robert's and Cersei's children are not Robert and Cersei's children. They're just Cersei's children with Jaime, her incesty brother. Oh, by the way, when the Lannisters went to visit the Starks, Bran found out that the little boy Bran found out that Jaime and Cersei are stooping, and so to keep that secret, Jaime decides to push Bran out the window. And Bran doesn't die, but he does end up paralyzed. So, again, I don't remember if at this point Bran remembers what happened, little Bran, but later on he does bring it up, and when he becomes a bird. So yes, so Stannis goes after the Lannisters and war, and Tyrion discovers that they have this, that the Lannisters actually have this amazing weapon at their disposal, which is, they're sort of like these explosive chemicals called wildfire, and so they use it to win the battle against the Stannis. So I can't remember when, like, how, because after Ned dies, they decide that, like, oh, that he can't marry Sansa anyway because her father was a traitor and yada yada yada. So Marjorie, who was married to Renly, shows up and is like, oh, I want to marry you and all this, because Marjorie, God bless her, she, even, like, her husband is dead, Renly's dead, killed by the lost cloud baby. She still wants to be queen. So she's all like, oh, I'm going to, marry Joffrey, and that way I'll be queen. And then, like, it slowly starts to dawn on her, this boy is cuckoo magoo. But I think I can manipulate him, and Cersei sees how she manipulates him, so Cersei hates Marjorie. Even though, like, I'm sorry, Cersei, you know your son is cuckoo magoo. And you think that, like, if Marjorie can, sort of like turn him to be a better king, even though like she's totally manipulating him and using him for her own ambition. Like, let her do that. Let her make him a good king. But Cersei's all about control and like, no, like she's gonna take my son away from me and blah blah blah. So Cersei decides that Margaery must die. So there's this whole thing with like these religious zealots, and she arranges it so that Margaery and her brother die, but before that, at the wedding, at Margaery's wedding to Joffrey, they Margaery has a grandmother who is this kick-ass old lady who, like Lady Olenna, is just this badass, snarky, strong grandmother. Again, misogyny where? Where? Olenna was this amazing old woman. And just, so Olenna knows what's up. Olenna knows that Joffrey is this cuckoo-magoo, cruel piece of crap that she doesn't want her granddaughter to have to endure. So she decides that on the daughter's wedding day, that they're gonna get rid of Joffrey. And this is what's known as the Purple Wedding, where Joffrey is poisoned by Olenna and a character who we hate called Littlefinger. Littlefinger is sort of the little smarmy, lechy kind of puppet master who throws, his favorite saying is chaos is a ladder, and he serves him up some chaos. And he's just this, he also wants him that fucking chair. So he is involved in all these like little schemes and pitting people against each other. Also, he can get the Iron Throne at the end. That is his goal. So he hooks up with Olenna and helps to poison Joffrey. Cersei is convinced that her dwarf brother Tyrion did it, so she has him arrested. And the relationship between the siblings are so interesting, because there are moments where you see like that they try and like keep the family unit like strong and together, and there are moments where you think these people care about each other, and then there's moments where the sister tries to have Tyrion killed. So there's that. Freaking rich people, man. So then Tyrion decides that he's gonna fight for his freedom, of course, and he insists that of course he's innocent. And Sansa is also like suspected, but Sansa gets whisked away by Littlefinger, who, now that Cat is dead, and he was in love with Cat, or in love. Littlefinger doesn't love anybody, but he calls it love. Now that Cat is dead, he set his sights on Sansa. So he's gonna save her, and whisk her away so that they can't arrest her, because they're gonna think that she also killed Joffrey. So yeah. So Tyrion, in I think his Emmy-winning performance, is in the court defending himself, and he gives this amazing speech. Amazing speech. after the woman that he loved, a whore named Shae, turns on him. Now, is this show amazing? Yes. Is this show, are there things that I would change? Yes. Because is this show perfect? No. There are things about it that I would change. And one of the things that I would change is Shae. Shae the whore starts off, yes, she's a whore, and Tyrion buys her, as it were, and they end up in an actual relationship. I mean, you see this relationship develop where it doesn't become just a guy with a prostitute. You see the scenes develop where they actually fall in love with each other and have feelings for each other. But Cersei and his family are a threat to Shae, and Cersei actually like threatens that she's gonna kill his whore. So Tyrion decides that he's gonna push Shae away and make her leave him by being, mean to her and telling her that he never loved her and that she's just a whore and blah blah blah. Now, when earlier in the relationship, Tyrion tells her, "You're my weakness, and they're going to use you to get to me," and she's all offended, like, "Oh, you're telling me that I'm weak and that I'm like," and he's like, "No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you can be used to hurt me, and you're my like weakness." And she's like, "Oh, are you saying that I'm too stupid to understand?" And blah blah blah. And then she proves herself too stupid to understand, because when he does push her away, her thought process isn't, "Oh, I understand the world that we live in. I understand how your family works and the threat that they pose to us and how they would want to hurt me to get back at you. So I'm going to understand that what you're doing, pushing me away, is to protect me." No! She gets all mad and hurt because he's betrayed her. So she decides that she's going to show up at his trial and testify against him to get back at him. And I'm like, you just proved yourself too stupid to understand what he was doing. And then she ends up stooping his father. And so Tyrion kills her. That is I think the first thing that I would have changed about what happened. Like, I don't like how they had Shae turn on Tyrion like that. I don't. I think that she should have been smarter and realized what Tyrion was doing. So yeah, then he gets a champion. He gives no Fs anymore, and decides that he's going to have a trial by combat, and he gets this guy from Dorne who also wants to get revenge against the Lannisters because the Mountain, who's the Hound's brother, killed his sister and killed his sister's children, and I think she was married to Dany's brother. Not the douchey brother, but the other brother who fell in love with somebody else. And we'll get to that. So, the guy, Prince Obi-Wan Kenobi, comes and is very happy to be Tyrion's champion because he wants to kill the mountain because the mountain killed his sister. And he is, you know, I liked his character. I loved his character. He was a great character. And the mountain kills him. So that happened. Now, Danny, after Jason Momoa dies, because he dies after in a wound and like he gets into a fight, and this other witch like betrays her and says that like she's gonna bring him back, but she doesn't really, and it's just awful, and so he ends up dying, but all through her, by her side has been this guy Jorah, who he is mayor. In the words of Joey to Ross from Friends, he is mayor of the friend zone. He loves Danny so much, but she doesn't love him that way. But he spends his entire life after, you know, being there to spy on her for the Lannisters. He spends the rest of that life protecting her and just like being there for her, and just their relationship is one of the most beautiful on the show. Unlike Rob's friend, Theon. Let's talk about Theon for a second, shall we? Played by the ridiculously talented Alfie Allen. Theon grew up as Ned Stark's ward. Now, how that came about was the Greyjoys, Theon's family, went to war against, I'm not sure if they went to war against the Starks or against the Baratheons, but Ned was there because he fought with Robert, who was his friend. And the Greyjoys like rose this rebellion, excuse me, and sort of Ned took little Theon hostage, as it were, to ensure that the Greyjoys would never attack them again. So little Theon was sort of their insurance policy. So he grew up with the Starks. He grew up sort of like as one of them, where to the point where he was more Stark than Greyjoy. But when Robb decides to go to war against the Lannisters, because they still have his sister Sansa is still there in the beginning. Theon tells him that, oh, let me go and talk to my father and get his army to help us too, thinking that he could just go and that his father would listen to him because he was his son. Not so much. Theon's father, well, first we meet Theon's sister after Theon, after having been away from his family for about 10 years, no longer recognizes his sister. So he decides that he's going to hit on the pretty girl who's going to take him to his home castle. So, incest. However, Theon reacts appropriately when they get to the castle and it is revealed that that's his sister, and he reacts appropriately in that he is disgusted by what he did. Yeah, so his sister, Yara, is actually the one who's kind of the captain of their military kind of deal. So again, misogyny where? Yara is this kick-ass woman who is running their army, basically. So Theon goes to them and he's like, oh, you know, come and join Robb's army, and we can go and together and help him get the Lannisters, get Sansa and Arya back. And the father's like, no, why would I help them? And like, how could you come and ask me that after like they took you? And then Theon's like, they didn't really take me, you gave me to them. Kind of thing. And the father is just this crabby old a-hole, and he demands that that Theon prove his loyalty to him. And unfortunately, proving his loyalty to his family means betraying Robb. Now, Theon, again, he was raised with the Starks, but he never felt like he was one of them. He was always kind of aware that he wasn't, he always felt like he was sort of the outsider, kind of looking in on this warm, loving family, which he didn't have. And even if he'd been left with the Greyjoys, he never would have had, because his father was a piece of shit. But so like he always felt like he saw what he wanted in like a warm, loving family, but that he felt like he could never be a part of. So his father was kind of telling him now, you know, the only way that I will accept you as like, and like welcome you back like as my son kind of thing, is if you betray Robb. And so he does. And this act is going to reverberate throughout the next, like this happens in season 2, and this act reverberates throughout the next 6 seasons. I mean, because of Theon's betrayal, it leads to Robb and his family going to the Freys because they're losing the war, and to try and like make peace with them, and it leads to them getting murdered at the Freys. So also one of the ways that the father wants him to prove himself is to take Winterfell, which is the Starks' home, as his own, to overtake it and rule it, and to take it for the Greyjoys. So Theon decides that he's gonna go and capture Winterfell with poor little paralyzed Bran, who's trying to run everything now that like his parents are gone and Robb's gone too. So it's kind of like Arya's missing, Sansa's at that point being held by the Lannisters. So Bran is the only one that's kind of left there. And he's kind of like running the place with the help of the head of their like guards and that kind of stuff, and Maester Luwin, who every kingdom has like this, the Maester, which is kind of like their not like priest, but like they're priests, they're kind of like doctor, they're just monk. Every kingdom has one. And for Winterfell, it's Maester Luwin, who is this very nice, wise old man. So Theon decides that he's going to take Winterfell. And he's not that guy. He wants to be that guy, that like ruler, a strong dude, and he's just not. But he does some pretty horrible shit to kind of prove himself as this great ruler, including burning. He doesn't do it, but he allows these two boys to get murdered and burned, to hide the fact that when Bran and Rickon, with the help of this wildling that the Starks had captured, escape after Theon takes Winterfell. Bran and them escape to fool their people into thinking that he had captured and burned Bran and Rickon. He murders these two boys, these two random farm boys. And that's just like, yeah, that was just awful. So at the end of it, Theon, his own men turn against him, and they knock him out, and they hand him over to this family called the Boltons. Now, when I said in the beginning that Joffrey was this cuckoo magoo, cruel piece of garbage, that was cute compared to this person. Theon gets handed over to the Boltons, who their flag is a cross showing a man flayed on the cross, strapped to a cross and flayed where that is, where like they peel their skin off their bones. So the Boltons are not the Boltons are a house, but they're kind of cuckoo magoo. And the most cuckoo magoo is a boy by the name of Ramsay Bolton, who we first meet when he's trying to help Theon escape from these people that his people have handed him over to, who are doing very bad, not nice things to him. I mean, they're torturing him pretty bad. So this random dude shows up and helps Theon escape-ish. Except not so much, as this random dude leads him right back to where he was being tortured, as a sort of sick psychological little game. But before he gets taken back, we get, in a heartbreaking scene, we get Theon discussing how he got to where he is, and how he regrets the decisions that he's made, and how he regrets, betraying the Starks and betraying Ned and calling Ned his real father, which was just beautiful because his biological father was a piece of shit. and Ned was more of a father to him than his own ever was. Um, so that was a beautiful, beautiful, heartbreaking scene, and then Theon gets taken back to where he was being tortured, and we realized that the guy who helped him was a sick, twisted, sadistic named Ramsay Bolton, who is the son of Roose Bolton, who was a part of Robb's army, but who pretty much turned against him at the first opportunity because he was actually loyal to the Lannisters. And so when Tywin Lannister, Jaime and Cersei's father, gave the order that Robb had to die, Roose Bolton is the one who helped carry that out with the Freys. And so Roose's son, Ramsay, makes Joffrey look like a cuddly little teddy bear. Ramsay is cuckoo magoo, but like cuckoo magoo. Like, he tortures this boy Theon for like 3 seasons. I mean, how Alfie Allen was like up on that fucking cross for like 3 seasons. Or like just, well, okay, at least like 2 seasons, because at the end of like, by the time like season 4 came around, by the time season 5 came around, he was pretty broken. There was this heartbreaking scene where Ramsay, like, just, I mean, Ramsay even goes so far as to cut off little Theon. Now, mind you, Theon didn't have a lot going for him in his life. He was, his family kind of hated him, his father hated him, and so they let Ned Stark take him as sort of insurance. He was raised in the Stark family, but he never actually felt a part of the Stark family. The one thing that Theon had as he grew older was that he was supposedly a good lover. I mean, he was good with the ladies. So that was sort of a point of pride to him. And so Ramsay, being the sadistic that he is, decides that he's gonna take that away from Theon using utensils. And so they cut off little Theon and send it to his father and his sister. And his sister decides that she's going to go and save her brother. So Yara's going to go and save Theon. Now, there's a scene where, in one of the scenes where Theon really kind of starts to psychologically break, is when Ramsay takes his name away from him. Ramsay decides that he's going to rename Theon as Reek. Just to sort of like break him down and take away even his identity away from him. And Theon like fights to keep his name, but Ramsay beats him until he finally agrees to let Ramsay call him Reek, just so the beating will stop. And it is just a heartbreaking scene. And so at the beginning of, I think, season 4, or maybe not the beginning, but like in season 4, we get this broken man. Basically, Theon is just completely broken, and he's loyal to Ramsay. And so Yara, his sister, goes to try and save him. Theon is so psychologically damaged that he thinks this is another sick game that Ramsay is playing with him, that it's a test, and that if Theon fails and actually believes and tries to go with his sister and escape, that it's going to be revealed to be a test, and Ramsay is going to punish him more. So when Yara comes and with the dog, Ramsay has these dogs, and the dogs are, Ramsay finds out that they're there, that Yara and her men are there to try and take Theon. He and his men fight and kill a lot of their men, and are going to loose the dogs on them. And Yara can't get Theon to come with her, so she leaves him there, and basically says, "I can't save my brother's dead." Now, my sister and I disagree on this, but in my opinion, yes, at that moment, they were outnumbered. The Ramsay's men had killed the men that Yara had brought, and yeah. However, I think that Yara should have tried again. I mean, like, she could have, like, she's a smart, badass woman. She should have come up with a plan. She knew what, like, her brother was broken. Like, Theon no longer está en casa. Nobody was home. So she could, like, she knew what, could imagine, like, what kind of torture her brother had endured to get to that state. So in my opinion, she should have come up with a plan to try again. And just, so then we get Sansa, who has been taken away from the Purple Wedding after Joffrey is murdered by, we find out, Olenna and Littlefinger. And Littlefinger decides that now that the Starks are gone from Winterfell, and that it's being held by the Boltons, he wants Winterfell. So he is, his plan is to marry Sansa to one of the Boltons, I guess, to, like, get their alliance. And then, because at first he'd taken her to, like, his aunt, his crazy aunt, or her crazy aunt, who we discover was actually in love with Littlefinger, and he used her to kill her husband, who was the Hand of the King in the beginning, that got murdered, and that's why Ned went down to King's Landing. That Littlefinger and Cat's sister, Sansa's aunt, were the ones that were actually behind that whole thing. And then, so Littlefinger marries the aunt just so he can be Lord of Littlefinger. Then he kills the aunt. And so now it was just him and Sansa there. So he decides that, okay, so he's got the veil now, he wants Winterfell. So he's going to marry Sansa off to a Bolton. 3 guesses which Bolton, but you only need one. Ramsay. And as a wedding, as a bit of a wedding gift, Sansa, the gift that she is given is Theon living in the kennels with the dogs, who she hasn't seen since they were all at Winterfell, and when the Starks, since before she left with her father, and who she holds responsible for the murder of her entire family. Like, she knows that because Theon betrayed Robb, then Robb had to go to the Freys and make this peace because he couldn't get the Greyjoy army. So she holds him personally responsible for the death of her family. And here he is. And so now she has to marry Ramsay, and Theon is there, and it's awkward, and it's just awful because Ramsay is this sick, twisted piece of garbage who makes Theon watch as Ramsay takes her for the first time, rapes her, essentially, and he makes him watch. Now, that scene, let's talk about that scene, shall we? We don't get it from Sansa's point of view, that particular scene. We get it, it cuts to Theon's face, and Theon's the one who's like reacting to it and is just, there's nobody home with Theon, but there's still a flicker of that young man who loved the Starks and grew up with them. And so Sansa is a girl that he grew up with. And Ramsay even says in his sickness, you knew Sansa as a girl, watch her become a woman. And it's just gross. So he is traumatized by what Ramsay does to her in front of him. So we just see that trauma on his face. Now, there was a lot of controversy about that scene. And how, like, I'm not sure if having it the other way would have been any better. Like, there was, because they focused on Theon and they made it like Theon was the important one to be suffering instead of Sansa. Like, no, I don't believe that's why they did it. I think they, in my opinion, they were actually doing a service or like a good thing in not showing it through Sansa, because I think it would have been more traumatizing if we saw it through Sansa. So sort of seeing it through Theon's eyes made it kind of less, I don't want to say less horrible, but less violating, I guess. Which, it was still a huge, like, it was awful, but less horrific, maybe? I don't know, but there was a lot of controversy over a scene that Sansa has later where she says something like, the Hound is talking to her and says, like, the last time I saw you, you were like a frightened little bird, and he's like, I can basically see that you're different now. And she's like, without Joffrey, without Ramsay, and like all the rest, I would have stayed a bird my whole life. And basically saying, without the things that have happened to me, I wouldn't be as strong as I am. And a lot of people took issue with those words. And yes, there are strong women on this show. Insanely strong, powerful women on this show. But Sansa didn't start out that way. I mean, and Dany didn't start out that way. They were these sort of fragile, kind of quiet little birds. And everything in life that we go through makes us stronger. And it's just fact that when you go through adversarial things, when you go through horrific things and come out and you've survived them, that you're stronger. And my instinct is to say, how dare you take that away from a survivor? Like, Sansa's a fucking survivor. And like, she wasn't strong before those things happened to her. She was a spoiled little brat before those things happened to her. There were other characters who, yes, they were not these spoiled little girls, but they were different in the beginning and then they grew, like Dany also. She grew. So my first thought when they say stuff like rape didn't make Sansa stronger, like, everything that she went through, including the rape, made her stronger. And I just think it's my personal instinct is just to say, how dare you? How dare you try and take away these things that the fight that she had to, like, pull out of her, like, she would have stayed that little bird forever. And it's not misogynistic, because that's not the only way that women gain strength. It's not. It's not how Arya became strong. It's not, as far as we know, how Cersei became strong. It's not even how Dany became strong. Just Sansa was one instance where she started and everything she'd been through, losing her family, people scheming against her, people trying to use her for their own political gains, the rape, just being tortured by Joffrey, like, all of that made her this strong person that she is at the end. So how dare you try and take away the fact that her being raped and fighting through that and surviving it and taking back her home after it, like, how dare you try and minimalize that and take that away from her? That's my take on it.